They told you to be kind, to be soft, to wait your turn. But mercy is a luxury reserved for those who've never been hunted, for those who've never been underestimated, backstabbed, or broken with a smile. You've lived in a world that feeds on the gentle, that eats the patient alive. And somewhere along the way, you realized kindness without power is an invitation to bleed. So you stopped waiting. You stopped asking. You started becoming something they couldn't digest. Owning the darkness doesn't mean losing your soul. It means protecting it. It means building a fortress around your purpose so strong that guilt can't shake it and fear can't touch it. It's not about turning evil. It's about being willing to go further than those who only pretend to care. You become the storm, not because you enjoy the chaos, but because no one survives it better than you. You stop flinching. You stop apologizing. You start speaking in results, not excuses. You walk into situations knowing you are the danger, the calculation, the force they didn't prepare for. And when they try to label you aggressive, intense, emotionless, you smile. Because you know those are just names for people they can't control. You've risen past mercy, not because you lack compassion, but because you've seen what compassion without boundaries becomes. You've been the one overlooked, the one doubted, the one who had to sharpen their own claws in silence. And now you've become something untouchable, not just respected, not just feared, unfazed. This world doesn't belong to those who wish for peace. It belongs to those who create it through power, who own their darkness, not as a curse, but as a weapon. You don't need to explain anymore. You don't need to soften your tone or shrink your shadow. You've done the work. You've walked through the fire. And you've come out coated in ash and purpose. Own the darkness. Rise beyond mercy, and make sure the world never forgets what happens when it pushes the wrong one too far. And now every step you take is deliberate, calculated. You've learned how to move without making noise, how to strike without warning. You are no longer fueled by the need to prove anything. You've surpassed that. Now you're driven by something colder, something cleaner, clarity. The clarity of knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of. The clarity of knowing that no one, not the loud, not the fake, not the so-called powerful, can match a soul forged in silence and sharpened by rejection. You've stopped flinching at loss, stopped fearing loneliness. Because the deeper you went into the darkness, the more you realized this is where the real ones are made. In isolation, your thoughts became weapons. In pain, your will became steel. You didn't just survive the storm, you studied it, mastered it, became something the storm now respects. They'll call you heartless. That's fine. Let them. What they don't understand is that your heart still beats, it just doesn't beat for comfort anymore. It beats for purpose, for dominance, for legacy. You've turned wounds into wisdom. You've turned abandonment into advantage. You don't chase light. You carry your own fire, and you burn with the knowledge that nothing out there can match what's been ignited within. So when they see you now colder, quieter, more precise, they won't understand what happened. Let them stay confused. You don't owe them the story. You are the consequence. You are what happens when someone who was counted out decides to become the one keeping count. And now the game isn't fair because you own the board. Let them play soft. Let them beg for peace. You've chosen power. You've chosen presence. You've chosen to own the darkness not as a victim, but as the architect of every move that follows. And from this moment on, there is no going back. There is no softness. There is only forward, only fire, only you unleashed, untouched, and unforgettable. And from this silence you've mastered, a new language is born, the language of presence. You don't beg for attention, you don't chase validation. You move, and the world adjusts. You speak, and the noise dies down. Not because you're louder, but because your words carry the weight of someone who's paid in pain, trained in solitude, and risen with no applause. That weight can't be faked. That gravity can't be copied. It's yours, and they feel it before you even say a word. You've reached the point where fear becomes fuel, where pressure becomes play. The line between threat and promise. You are that line. You don't need to intimidate. You exist, and that's enough. Because behind the calm is carnage. Behind the silence is strategy. And behind your stillness is a war machine ready, always ready, to crush anything foolish enough to test what you've built in blood and discipline. You no longer flinch when things fall apart. In fact, you welcome it, because destruction to others is opportunity to you. You've learned how to build in rubble, how to sharpen your mind in chaos, and how to find peace in places that used to kill the old you. That version of you, the one that hesitated, that over-explained, that waited for permission, is gone, buried beneath the weight of who you've become. Now, every room you enter shifts. Every eye that meets yours flinches, even if they pretend not to, because they know, they sense it, that they're not looking at someone trying to survive anymore, they're looking at someone who's become the consequence. You don't follow energy, you set it. You don't fight for space, you own it. And you don't ask for peace. You bring war if necessary, without a tremble in your voice. This is what happens when you rise beyond mercy. When you stop playing by their rules and become the one they have to adjust to. You don't need the world to love you. You just need the world to remember pushing you was the last mistake they'll ever make. And now you move through life with a presence that doesn't beg, it demands. You're not here to negotiate your worth or explain your edge. That time has passed. You've crossed that invisible line few ever reach, where power no longer needs to announce itself. It's understood, it's felt, and whether they admit it or not, they adjust when you walk in. That's the art you've mastered: influence without noise, impact without effort. They try to read you, try to label you, try to measure you by their shallow standards. But how do you measure what was built in hell? How do you define someone who bled for every ounce of peace they carry? The truth is, they can't. Because you've become something different. You're not simply strong. You're not simply focused. You're inevitable. You've seen the games, the masks, the manipulation, and you've grown past it all. You're no longer triggered by insult or shaken by chaos. You watch it all unfold, steady, unshaken, untouched. Because you've realized domination isn't about reacting. It's about controlling the field so deeply, the game ends before it even starts. They thought you were just another contender. But contenders compete. You conquer. You're not here to be liked. You're here to leave marks. You're not here to blend in. You're here to rewrite the atmosphere. You don't demand respect anymore, you carry it, like armor, earned and enforced. And now, when you speak, it's with a weight that quiets rooms. When you move, it's with a confidence that makes the insecure tremble. Not because you try, because you exist. This is the reward for walking through the fire and not flinching, for burying the weaker version of yourself and rising out of your own ashes with sharper vision, colder blood, and zero hesitation. Now you own the darkness. You sit at the table you built, and when the world asks, "Who do you think you are?" you answer with silence, because your legacy speaks louder than any reply ever could. Like, comment, and subscribe.